Hey everyone, my name is Gloria and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing the very popular but poorly named mid-year book Freakout tag, which is a video where people talk about some of their best and worst reads of the year and looking at their reading so far since it's halfway through the year. So this tag has been around for quite a while and several people have been altering it over the years. I like the original 14 questions, but some people have altered them and I've added 2 questions that I like knowing about, which are more stat-based. So I've included those in my questions. I'll list them down below of the ones that I'm going to be doing. Let's just jump into this. The first question is, how many books have you read so far? So far, we only have a couple days left in June, but I have read 79 books, which is crazy for me. I read 70 books last year, so that's why I set the goal for 75. I just kind of didn't know where my reading was at. Even though I surpassed my 75 book goal, I'm still so happy with that. I think I will easily be able to reach the 100 book mark. I'm not really worried about numbers. They are motivating for me, but I've already reached my goal and I'm already happy about it. So my new win is going to be 100. I think that'll be easy to achieve. Anything past that is amazing. Question 2 is, what have you been reading? And this is where I'm going to look at like my book spreadsheet that I keep stuff on. Overall, I'm at 23,124 pages read and about 260 hours of audiobooks listened to. In terms of genre, no surprise that I read 43% nonfiction, and that is my biggest genre of books that I read. Second place is historical fiction, which is at 15.2%. Surprisingly, classic has a bit of a bulk. It's a number 3 with 11.4%. That's really only because, spoiler, in the month of June I've read the majority of Anne of Green Gables series and they are technically classics. That's why that genre is kind of bulked up a bit. And then in number 4, graphic novels. Again, spoiler for later in the video, but that's a whole newfound thing that I figured out this month. That's been crazy. In terms of format, I've read 46 physical books, 36 audiobooks, and read 1 ebook. This is a little bit surprising just because pre-booktube I was very avid audiobook listener and I've listened to way more audiobooks than physical books, but I think lately I've been getting a lot of books out of the library and I love reading physical books. For my book ratings, I use half stars as well, so I have more options. So right now I've given 19 books 3 stars and I've given 4 stars to 18 books. I think just under 80% of this pie chart is 3 stars or above, and then over 50% is 3.5 stars and above. So that's pretty good. I would love to read more 5-star books and bulk up that number. I've only read 8. All right, question number 3, which is most people's number 1 question, is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? I've read a few really great books so far, but I have one ultimate standout, and that is Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. This historical fiction set on the Oregon Trail just swept me away, and I read it basically all in one day. I really couldn't put it down, and I loved following the characters in the story. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far? I haven't read many sequels. The only ones I can think of is Nancy Drew and The Hidden Staircase, which is the second book in the Nancy Drew series, and then of course Anne of Avonlea, which is the second book in the Anne of Green Gables series, and that is my winner for this question. Question number 5 is, what is a new release that you haven't read but want to? The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. I mean, yes, I've talked about this in a lot of videos too. I need to read this and I'm going to read it this summer. Just give me a second. And the other new release that I'm dying to read is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I read The Martian this year, also one of my favorite books of the year so far, and I'm dying to pick up his new release. This just sounds super cool. About a man stranded in space, wakes up with amnesia, doesn't know what happens. He has a mission. He needs to figure out what happened, what went wrong, and how to survive. If it's any way paced the same as The Martian was and has similar kind of wit and humor and survival, I feel like I'm gonna be all about it. Question number 6 is, what is the biggest disappointment so far this year? And that one pretty easily is Ready Player One for me. I really didn't like it. I read this book in January. This is a very popular and beloved sci-fi book about a young teenager. It's set in the distant future. A really famous rich man dies and hides all of his money and inheritance in clues in a video game, virtual reality kind of thing. This teenager plays this game with some friends and like is figuring it out, and there's like an evil corporation, and this whole book is, like I mentioned in my January wrap up, just like 80s word vomit. All it is really 80s movies and music and video game references. I just really didn't care for it. The other book that I was really disappointed with is Severance by Ling Ma. This is a dystopian post-apocalyptic book. It really shouldn't be that. It's barely that. It has a little bit of like end of world vibes. Mostly it's about this 20-something-year-old girl who doesn't know what she wants to do in her life and doesn't like her job and has like boyfriends here and there. It wasn't really what I was hoping for, and I just didn't vibe with it. Question 7 asks, what is the biggest surprise so far? I have never been a graphic novel person. I didn't really get it. I'm like, you're reading like a comic book or like a picture book. Is it really a book? And boy, was I ignorant. What started it all is, like I was saying, I'm reading the Anne of Green Gables series, and I picked up this graphic novel from my library and I really enjoyed it. It's a beautiful companion if you've read the Anne of Green Gables children's book series. Lovely illustrations, and it made me find the graphic novel section in my library where I was perusing, and I realized that there are a lot of really cool graphic novels and a lot of good nonfiction graphic novels, and a favorite that I've read so far is A Fire Story by Brian Fies. This is a nonfiction account of Brian Fies, the author's experience losing his home in the 2017 California wildfires, and he tells the tragedy of what happened in a very like journalistic way. It was very engaging, it was great to read, and I loved it, and it's opened up my eyes to graphic novels as a whole, specifically nonfiction ones. I think that's really cool. Question 8 is, what is a new favorite author? Now for me, I consider a favorite author if you've read a few of their books. So for me, last year Ruta Sepetys was definitely a favorite author and is still a favorite author because I've read all of her works and I really did enjoy all of them. She's a great young adult historical fiction writer. This year, although I did absolutely love this book and I have high hopes for Amy Harmon being a new favorite author, I really feel like I need to pick up more of her books, which I did mention in my tried one want more video that I just did about 8 authors I want to read more from. She's definitely one of them, so she has potential to be a favorite because this book was a favorite, but I can't say so yet because I've only read one of her books. So I think the true answer to this question is Ellen Montgomery, who wrote the Anne of Green Gables series. I'm very much enjoying the series. I'm not quite done yet, but I've read more than one of her books this year. I'm on her 6th book so far, and I truly do appreciate the beautiful characters in the story that she's made and the way that she writes about Canada and nature and imagination. It's whimsical and it's lovely and it's wholesome, and so I can really appreciate her as an author, especially writing in the early 1900s. As a female author, I think that's awesome. Number 9 is your new favorite character. So I looked back through the books that I've read, and usually my favorite books are the characters that I love the most. So without saying, I loved Where the Lost Wander, and I absolutely loved Naomi May and John Lowry as a couple and as individual characters in this book. They were incredible and I was rooting for them, and they were well-rounded and multidimensional. I really hate when characters fall flat and feel very unrealistic to me. They don't feel like real people, and this was definitely not the case. I really came to care for these characters and I really loved how they were written. And secondly, like I mentioned, The Martian, I really liked Mark Watney as an astronaut. He was very witty, loved his humor, loved how intelligent he was, and I was rooting for him so much. And I recently watched the movie with my husband, and I think Matt Damon does a pretty good job bringing Mark Watney to life as a character. Question 10 is a book that made me cry. I have a few. The first one is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This book is a beautiful memoir from Chanel Miller's perspective as a rape victim in the Stanford sexual assault case and her experience in the trial. I listened to the audiobook, which I would highly recommend because she tells her own story, and it did make me tear up quite a bit. It was hard, but it was written beautifully. The other ones that I just have to mention, Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, another nonfiction. Bryan Stevenson is an incredible man who is a lawyer involved with death row inmates, and he has done some incredible work. This book mostly infuriated me because it made me so mad at our justice system and how messed up it is, but it was also very sad and tragic. And finally, another nonfiction that made me tear up is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. This book is about the slaughterhouse and factory farming industry in America. It will mostly make you very uncomfortable. It physically made me not feel well, like sick, a little nauseous, because it's kind of brutal and gross to hear about how animals are treated. But it did make me tear up too because it was just sad, and it's never fun to listen to to accounts of animal cruelty. And even besides that, it made me emotional because it raised a lot of like ethical dilemmas that I was processing, and it made me just sort of like feel things. But it was very informative. Number 11, a book that made me happy. I really enjoyed My Life in France by Julia Child. I think she's a really cool lady who did a lot of awesome stuff, and she lived her life with such freedom and abandon and joy and positivity. And it was just really fun to read her memoir about cooking in France and her life with her husband. And it was just really cool to see this badass lady becoming a chef and making a way for herself in the culinary world and changing that field. The other one that I also absolutely loved was 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. This is a really cute collection of letters between Helene Hanff, the author, and a bookstore in London, and their correspondence over the years, and it was just wholesome and sweet and happy, and it just made me smile. Question 12 is, what is the most beautiful book you have bought or received? I know everyone's sick of me mentioning this book, but The Four Winds by Kristin Hanna. This is the UK edition, and I absolutely love it. You can't really tell in this lighting, but it has beautiful gold foiling. But because you're sick of me talking about this book, I'm also going to mention this one, which is The Music of Bees by Aline Garvin. I am a sucker for any book with bees on the cover, and this was definitely a cover buy at Powell's. I saw this cover with bees on it, had to buy it. I also am collecting books with bees on the cover, so that was also part of my reasoning. I just think this is such a cute, happy book. We are nearing the end. Question 13 is, what are some books that you want to read before the end of the year? So many books. My TBR list, all the books that I want to read, is over 300 books long. I don't even think I'll be able to read all these books in my lifetime, but I can sure try. And I also don't want to repeat myself a ton. I have a whole playlist of TBR videos that I've made of books that I want to read this year. I've made some progress, but not as much as I'd like to, so I'm really going to be trying to read some of those books in the second half of this year. But some other books I want to mention that I haven't mentioned before is The Revolution of Marina M. by Jeanette Fitch. This is a historical fiction set in St. Petersburg, Russia in the early 1900s, which is during the revolution. I'm a sucker for any book set in Russia. I've heard really good things about this book from Brittany from Literarily Smitten. I'm excited about this one. I also really want to pick up Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. I have both of these books checked out from the library, so I mean, fingers crossed, high hopes that they'll be read soon. This is a historical fiction set in Iceland, and it deals with a woman wrongfully accused of something, and she is put on trial, and who knows what happens, but it sounds really intriguing. I love that it's set in a country I haven't read anything about before. I really want to read Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is a sci-fi, a post-apocalyptic kind of book. I read the first chapter in my try a chapter video, and I did enjoy it, and I'm really hoping to get this one. A favorite book that I read so far that I haven't mentioned is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I loved this book, and it made me have hope for reading classics, which makes me want to pick up stuff like Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte or Wuthering Heights. I have so many classics that I want to get to, and I really need to not be intimidated by this and just read it, because I did have a good experience with Rebecca, so why wouldn't I have a good experience with this? You know? And finally, to wrap this up, question 14 is, what are some goals that you have for the rest of this year, specifically book-wise? And I have a few goals. I've had so much fun joining this book community and getting to know some people, and I would love to keep getting to know more people. I would love to do a buddy read with a fellow booktuber or even a subscriber. I would love to read the book along with someone here online. I think that'd be so fun. I have a lot of video ideas, and I want to make those. I have a lot of like themed reading vlogs that I would love to do, and I just want to make sure that I actually do them and that I'm motivated to do them. And then finally, I really just want to read more books off my shelves. I have so many unread books here, and I really want to try to knock some of those off the list. I'm having a ton of fun reading books this year and making videos and talking about the books I've read, and it's been great, and I'm so excited for the rest of the year. I really appreciate you guys watching and tuning in and commenting. It makes me smile and makes me so happy, and I will see you guys with another video soon. Bye!